just to give you guys a little bit of background, the non-secure program has been through tremendous changes over the course of this year. And I've been talking to Charles about it throughout the year because it was really one problem after another. And things were happening so quickly, and we didn't know what was going on with the clients. So we felt that the more we know about what type of client we're serving, of course, the better services we can provide. And the only way that we can really figure out what's happening with these clients is if we really look at the trends throughout the times within the centers. So as we started looking at the trends throughout the centers, we started looking at the trends throughout the state. And I figured with that, why not look at the trends throughout the times, throughout the country? Do we have that PowerPoint up? So I thought that this would give us some good background because it really brings it home with what type of client we're looking at today, because we've been talking about this third generation drug addict. And a lot of people don't really have a good understanding of what that is. So I tried to do my best to break that down. So I really want to help you guys to understand. Okay, so this is our first generation. This is where I felt this all originated from. This was the 60s and the 70s. This was Woodstock and John Lennon's Love-Ins and all this flower power stuff going on. This is when mescaline was big and people were tripping on acid and they were doing window panes and all different kinds of magic mushrooms and belladonna and different types of hallucinogens. So this is kind of what really started that hippie era. Everybody was driving Volkswagens and everybody was feeling groovy. Okay, so we moved on into the 80s and the 90s, and these were the children of the previous generation. This is Angelina Jolie on heroin, okay? So it started off people sniffing cocaine, shooting heroin, and then kind of towards the late 80s, early 90s, crack came on really strong and really started hitting the streets. And people were really going crazy. So the big thing at this time, if any of you remember, was detox. It was kind of like the place to go, because the people that were shooting heroin really needed to clean up for a couple of days so that they can go back out and get that big high again. They were always chasing that big first high. So it was good for them to get their bodies clean and then try again. And the crack addicts on the street were going so absolutely wild that they just needed 3 hots and a cot to rest up so that they can go back and put that energy back into it again. So it really was like a vicious cycle with people coming in and out of these detox programs. So as this was happening, Clinton stepped in because people were using their Medicaid cards to get this whole thing going. Clinton put in this managed care Medicaid, and he kind of put a stop to this because there was so much abuse going on. So what happened was, when you came into detox now, you were no longer eligible unless you can really show physical signs that you actually needed to be in a hospital, medically cared for. So in order for them to get around that little kink, you had to have a psych diagnosis. So it was easy for these guys because they were all depressed, they were all crashing. They were anxious, they were coming up with these symptoms. So they were actually being diagnosed psychiatrically. So now the thing was, they were on Zyprexa, Zoloft, Prozac, they started prescribing Xanax, and this is what turned this generation into like the value moms, the stay-at-home moms. So while the moms were at home eating up their Valiums, the children of the flower power people, right? There was also this big insurance scam going on. If any of you remember this, everybody who got bumped in the rear had whiplash. Everybody was making all kinds of money back then because the insurance companies were giving up on all these cases. So all these dads were doing Dilaudid and Lortabs. So as the moms were eating the Xanax, the dads were eating the Dilaudids. So this was the nature of this generation. So this generation brought on the next generation. This is the face of 2000, 2010, okay? These guys, they were much, much more creative. This is the internet generation. So doing straight up heroin, straight up cocaine wasn't enough for them. They wanted to kind of mix and match and concoct, and they had all kinds of access to information on the internet, so they were able to do all kinds of creative stuff. So this is where the club drugs came in, and even the methamphetamines, where they needed all these different little paraphernalia to get their thing going on. So we started getting these date rape drugs, and now it turned into pill farms. Does anybody know what a farm party is? Anybody ever hear of a farm party?
Is that when they bring like a whole bunch of drugs that they don't know what they are, and they just sort of
right.
take whatever they see?
Everybody gets invited to this party on Friday night, and they get anything they could get their hands on in their own medicine cabinets. So what's happening is they throw it all in a bowl, and then they pick at it like M&Ms. Like nobody knows what it is. It could be anything at all. So who's the supplier? The moms and dads. The Xanny mom and the Loratab dad. They're the ones who are supplying these kids. And this one wound up actually ODing. The cause of death was actually alcohol. But her body was so trashed. I mean, I can't imagine the damage that went on with her. Okay, so that's the idea of what we're dealing with today. We have these guys that are so much more creative, and they have no kind of base to them, you know. What we used to do rehab when guys came into program and women came into program. We used to be able to draw on something that they had in their past. You know, I remember listening to the clients where they would say, you know, I used to really care about people, and I used to be really honest, or, you know, and I turned into this person. But today, you know, we can't work with any kind of shame or guilt because they're getting their drugs from their own homes. There's nothing, there's no base there. There's nothing where I used to be. They never were. They have no understanding that there's something outside of what they're doing right now, what's gotten them into program. So the people that we're seeing coming into non-secure programs today are not dealing with guilt and shame. They're not being rehabilitated. We're rehabilitating them. We're the first ones that are saying, wait, you got to stop. This is bad. We can't be doing this. Because their moms and their dads are not the role models that we used to see from years ago. This is the third generation addict that we're dealing with today. And this is dangerous because what's happening is that they come into non-secure, they fail, and they wind up in work release. So our clients will eventually be your clients. So for us, we kind of got hit head on with it, you know. This new kind of client came into the center this year, and we were like, wow, what is happening here, you know? And my staff is all sitting here today, and I have to really commend every single one of them because I have to tell you, the work that these people have done with these clients that have come into this center is absolutely incredible. Because we've had many, many staff meetings where we sat around and said, what the heck? You know, like, I'm like out of answers here. Like, where do we go? You know, how do you intervene? We've put every intervention we could possibly think of in place to slow up these guys. You know, and every day it's like, I have another idea. Because we need another idea. Because these guys are not afraid. They are meaner and better, and they are superhuman. The consequences are meaningless to them. So the leverage that we used to have is just not there the way it used to be. So with that understanding of who our client is today, I want to move into the trends within our state and help you to understand how big this is, how vast it is, and how, you know, I was telling Charles the other day, it seems like you plug in a hole over here and another leak springs open over here. Every time, you know, the legislatures even step in and they try to curtail it in one way, it really kind of opens up another window because these clients are so innovative. They're so creative, and they have this internet access where they could just get information on how and which way to maneuver this whole system. So I'm going to read you some facts here today. Florida is the epicenter of prescription drug of the prescription drug abuse epidemic. Each day in communities from Jacksonville to Fort Lauderdale, thousands of doses of powerful narcotics like oxycodone are being dispensed in pain clinics. And these are storefront operations, which we call pill mills. Everybody's familiar with these pill mills, correct? Okay, Florida has more pain clinics than McDonald's restaurants. All right? This year, 7 people died every single day in Florida from prescription drugs. This is an 8% increase from last year. And 3 people died every single day from oxycodone in Florida, okay? Just directly related to oxycodone. According to the Drug Enforcement Agency, of the top 100 doctors nationally for dispensing oxycodone, 98 of them are in Florida. Is that not incredible? I mean, these are incredible statistics. Doctors in Florida prescribe 10 times more oxycodone pills than every other state in the country combined. People come from all over the southeast to visit the state of Florida's pain clinics. In the past year, the joint law enforcement operation has made 300 undercover drug buys in pain clinics, okay? And 400 pain clinics have shut their doors just this year. Prosecutors have indicted dozens of pill mill operations, and nearly 80 doctors in the state of Florida have seen their licenses suspended for prescribing mass quantities of prescription drugs with no probable cause, okay? No medical need. New laws are also cutting off distribution. As of July, Florida doctors are banned, with a few exceptions, from dispensing narcotics and addictive medicines from their offices. Doctors now have limits on the number of pills that they're allowed to dispense. There are still several hundred pain clinics throughout the state of Florida. And a major reason why these pill mills have proliferated in Florida is because we did not have a drug monitoring system. So law enforcement officials say that if we had that, it would prevent doctor shopping. Does everyone know what doctor shopping is? Doctor shopping, going from one clinic to the next, buying hundreds of milligrams doses of pills. In fact, Florida does have a prescription drug database, and after years of lobbying by law enforcement, the legislature did pass a bill last summer. However, they didn't have the money to fund it. We finally do have this new monitoring system. The law was passed, the monies were released on October 17th, just a couple of weeks ago, okay? So there's one hole that was plugged in. So I was like, well, that's really great, because then maybe it would really slow this thing down. And then coincidentally, I'm listening to the news, and last Friday, the Drug Enforcement Administration announced the formation of a new special squad that was just solely to investigate illegal drug use in Central Florida. And coincidentally, right by my house, there's this pharmacy called the Medicine Shop. And they busted 22 people that day because this pharmacy dispensed to 7 different people, to these hundreds and doses, 15,000 oxycodone pills to be distributed out on the street just that day. So 22 people, including probably, I think it was like 6 doctors, were indicted. So now they're saying that because they're coming down at the pain clinics, it's the pharmacies that are now the go-to place to buy mass quantities of these pills. So in June, the DEA received 263 applications for new pharmacy licenses nationwide. 139 of those were in Florida. Can you imagine? So we stopped it in one area, and it kind of spread out again in the next. So guys, this is what we're looking at. This is what's happening throughout the whole state of Florida. Okay. So opiates are drugs derived from opium. Opioids refer to synthetic opiates such as fentanyl, morphine, codone, oxycodone. Opioids are any substance that activates the body's opioid receptors. They've been around for ages, and they're used in the treatment usually for injuries, pain, surgeries. But really where we saw opioids and any opiates being prescribed was when somebody kind of had like end-stage cancer, AIDS patients. Like usually that was really the only time that we ever heard of anybody being prescribed the Loratabs, the Percocets, the really heavy-duty opiates. Well, today that is very much changed, and a lot of you who are working in treatment, the counselors, I'm sure you listen to the clients, and you might have somebody who had a good amount of time clean and then they relapsed, and when we're exploring what happened, it's typically, well, you know, I had this back pain or I hurt my back and they put me on Loratabs or Dilaudid and I was off to the races. So a lot of people are relapsing because these opiates are now an easy script. So whereas before you had to have this searing pain, now you can get a prescription for opiates for headaches or even menstrual cramps, okay? So once introduced into the body, opiates create more and more opioid receptors. So these opiate receptors keep happening every time you bring more opiates into your system. So you just have to keep bringing more and more opiates into your system so that it creates more and more opiate receptors. So the more opiate receptors it creates, the more opiates you need. So you just keep trying to get higher and higher, but it just keeps coming back at the same level. So what do they call that? Does anybody know? Absolutely, tolerance. So you need more and more and more just really to get the same high. You're just not getting higher. And that's what I was saying about these heroin addicts, you know. So they thought their game was that if I cleaned all the opiates out of my system and I jumped into detox for a couple of days, I can go back out there and start all over again and get that big high. So most opiates people are chasing that big high, and they just really can't ever get back to it because of tolerance, okay? Withdrawal from opiates can be pretty intense, and the symptoms include vomiting, muscle and bone pain, fatigue, depression, anxiety, nausea, tremors, muscle spasm, chills, sweating, irritability. So all of these things happen when you're in withdrawal from opiates. So typically, when you have somebody who uses opiates, they do this thing where they maintain their supply. And does anybody know what that means? Has anybody heard of an opiate user maintaining their supply? They always have some for the next day. They never ever want to go into withdrawal. So even if you get somebody on the streets who's shooting 2 bundles of heroin, they'll always save 1 bag for that very next day, so that when they get up in the morning, they can shoot themselves up, go out and rob somebody, make some money so that they can get some more drugs. Because if they don't have that 1 bag, they'll be too sick and they can't start off their day. So opiate users always have to maintain their supply. So this is very interesting. In an attempt to deter abuse, a new version of OxyContin came out. So it hit the market last summer, and it's this reformulated pill, and they made it into like this kind of gummy version. So when they try to crush it up, it's not that powdery substance anymore, it's more of a gummy substance. And on the streets, they actually call it gummies, because when they try to eat it, it kind of gets all stuck in their teeth. And then when they try to snort it, it cakes up and it gets stuck in their nose. So this is really getting the drug addicts very frustrated. So what do you think they're doing to combat this? Finding other options. Yeah, I want to talk about that. So a powerful narcotic meant for cancer patients and others with searing pain, OxyContin is designed to slowly release its active ingredient, oxycodone, over 12 hours. So after it was introduced, the drug abusers, they quickly discovered that chewing an OxyContin or crushing it up and snorting it or actually shooting it up created such a powerful high, it was equivalent to heroin, okay? The new reformulated drug, the gummy drug, is causing so much frustration with all of these abusers out there that they're going back to heroin. So heroin, they're saying, is on the upswing again. It's coming back onto the streets because instead of it acting as a deterrent, it just pushed them back to the original drug. And this is what Charlie talks about all the time. It goes in cycles, you know, it just keeps coming around. The old drugs become the new drugs now. So what's popular today? Demand appears especially high for the pure oxycodone pills that come in the 30 milligram dose, and they're called Perk 30s or Roxys. I'm sure you guys heard these guys talk about these Roxys. What I want to introduce you to is Opana. I don't know if any of you heard that. This one is coming on strong. It's been around for about 5 years. It's a powerful time-release painkiller. It's very similar to OxyContin, and it's coming up in all the police reports now. So they're saying this one is the one to look out for. Prices vary. They probably go for like $1 a milligram. So the 30 milligram oxycodone tablets are usually $20 to $30. The old OxyContin, that was 80 milligrams, were $80 on the streets. $80 they were paying for this. The reformulated version, because nobody liked it, you could get them half price for $40. Okay? Okay. So again, the message here is look out for the heroin. It's coming back, okay? So I just want to go through just a couple of drugs that we've been really seeing hit us this year, and the drugs that we've been hearing a lot about from the guys that we've been talking to. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with this. These are the bath salts. They're called Ivory Wave, White Lightning, Hurricane Charlie. So they could be snorted, smoked, injected. They cause hallucinations, paranoia, rapid heart rate, suicidal thoughts. So effects from snorting these bath salts are similar to those produced from cocaine and methamphetamines, okay? And Florida's already implemented a ban on that, okay? This is the drug I've been talking about all year, you know. When we were talking about what was going on at the Orlando Bridge, it was all about K2. And what was interesting was that when we looked at just some numbers and the whole guys that had left and just, you know, different data that we had, what was actually going on was that the final discharge wasn't about K2, but it was about opiates. So, you know, people were asking me, but I thought you said K2 was like the big thing here. So let me give you some background on this. First of all, these are all the different names that it's sold under. This is an herb laced with psychoactive chemicals, and it's often referred to as spice. That's the most familiar name. It's designed to mimic the effects of marijuana without appearing in the THC tests. So what happens is the guys expect to feel relaxed and sleepy and their blood pressure calm, reduced blood pressure, and at high doses, hallucinations. But what's actually happening is they're coming, as soon as they're smoking it, hallucinations, increased agitation, elevated blood pressure. So we had these guys coming back to the center from work, and they were just like bugging out. Their eyes were darting, and they were anxious, and they were sweating, and they were having these really bad experiences. We're writing them up. They're coming into DR court, or they're speaking to the counselors, and they're saying, I can't believe that happened. If I would have known that this drug was going to do this, I would have never done this, you know? So they're expecting to feel one way on this drug, but they're getting something completely different. What helped us, what backed them off, was that we actually got a test now through Redwood that's test specifically for K2. So as soon as they knew that we can do that, that kind of slowed it down. Another thing that we put in place was a pharmacology class, because we kept hearing these reports from the clients that they were pretty scared. I mean, this was pretty horrific for them. They didn't expect that experience. And remember now, a lot of the guys that we're working with are really young guys. They're like 20s, 21, 22-year-olds. So we put this pharmacology class in place, and it kind of gave them a forum to really process this and talk about the different effects and enlighten each other as we were learning about it. So it was a pretty good intervention. The thing was, When they went out, because there was such easy access to this K2, they were able to get it at any store, you know, 7-Eleven, right at the bus stop. You know, they're smoking it and they're lying and they're hiding it and they're manipulating and, you know, doing all these negative relapse kind of things. They got their heads right out of treatment. Treatment just wasn't happening for them anymore. So as soon as they started smoking K2, I mean, the counselors were doing these wonderful groups and, you know, we had this great program, but nobody was there. They kind of checked out, you know. So it was easy for them to go back to their drug of choice. So what happened was the K2 really acted as a gateway drug for these guys to go back out and really start using the opiates again. So when we looked at, you know, the data for our discharges, it was opiate across the board with a few K2 that we caught, that we got them on at the end result. But the K2 was what actually led them to the opiates. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Interesting. Adderall, Ritalin. This is a central nervous system stimulant. Changes the amount of certain natural substances in the brain. It's amphetamine-like. It's classified with cocaine and morphine because of its high abuse potential. It's used to control symptoms of ADHD. I'm sure everybody's heard of this. And ADHD is difficulty focusing, controlling your actions, and staying focused. It's also used to treat narcolepsy, that's that sleep disorder. It's notoriously easy to access on the internet. So because you can get it so easy on the internet, the big place where you'll see it most is in these college dorms. These kids use it to study. They use it as a cognitive enhancer. And it's a short-lived high, and it's a pretty powerful crash with this. So what you see coming at you is these kids that are really coming down, very sluggish, depressed. So they are addictive, and they may play a part, and recently played a part in the hospitalization of 13 University of Iowa football players. Okay? Whippets. These whippets have been around from the 90s, you know, but if you talk to people, you'll find that they're just as prevalent today as they were back then. They're still the drug of choice for so many people. And I felt like this was something that we really needed to bring up today because this is just so accessible. This is actually, everybody probably heard of huffing. So all you need is a whipped cream charger, which acts as a steel cylinder. It's fueled with nitrous oxide. So just for you to know, there are 1,400 products, potentially dangerous, found in the home, in your office, in the garage, and in our maintenance sheds. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because they can take almost anything and huff it. Typewriter correction fluid, AC coolant, gasoline, felt tip markers, spray paint, butane, air freshener, cooking spray, paint, glue, anything. So although inhaling nitrous oxide gained popularity in the 90s, it's still a high of choice for many people. But those looking for a pleasant buzz might experience hallucinations and risk brain damage. The warning signs: glassy, glazed, watery eyes, behavior, mood changes, slurred speech, excitability, and sudden sniffing death syndrome. And if you don't die from this and you use it at an extreme amount, it absolutely will damage vital organs, the brain, the liver, and the kidneys. Okay. This is something brand new. This is something that I've been also told to look out for. This is called DMT. And it actually looks like grass when you first see it. It looks like a lawn. And this is after it's processed and cooked up. It's popping up also in the college dorms. And again, full circle, it's a hallucinogen. So the kids are really attracted to this. It's a quick psychedelic high. And although it seems safer than methamphetamines, it still elevates your heart rate and it causes paranoia, long-term effects. Okay? This is really like a loss of connection with reality. It's one of those disassociatives. Okay? I don't know if anyone's familiar with these anti-energy drinks. This is something we have to be careful of when our guys deviate and they go into 7-Eleven. This is relaxation in a can. Malava Novocaine, drank, and Mary Jane's relaxing soda. It's laced with marijuana. They're found to contain sedatives, sold on college campuses and many convenience stores. The latest Cana-Cola is actually infused with THC. This was our latest nightmare at the Orlando Bridge. We had a bad experience with this. They call this DXM or triple C. So this is what we're looking for here are cough medicines, anything with DM on it, okay? So right now there's 120 over-the-counter cough medicines that have DM on it. So a couple weeks ago we had this one guy who was actually hopping the fence in the middle of the night, running over to Walmart and just getting Robitussin and just eating as many Robitussin as he could. And the guy was just zonked out of his brain. And the clients were reporting this guy is high. This doesn't show up in the drug tests. Okay, it's called robo-tripping or skittling. It's a heightened perceptual awareness, causes visual hallucinations, altered time perceptions, and once again, if you buy it on the internet, you can get it in a powdered form. And what's really bad about it is that they can't regulate how much they're taking, which makes it very, very, very dangerous. Okay? So this is what I wanted to bring to you guys today, just to let you know that these are the trends that are out there right now. And these drugs have really hit us hard, and they've created a whole different client for us to look to today, for us to treat, and for us to kind of modify our programs towards.